energy system. As you know, rapid scale-up of variable renewable energy calls for greater flexibility and the reliability of the networks while ensuring supply adequacy. This is where energy storage comes in to play a critical role. Today, we are going to focus on a very specific subtopic about energy storage. That's how the regulatory and market design framework can evolve to fully recognize and remunerate the full value of energy services. We are very delighted to have a very stellar panel of leaders and experts in this field. We have Mr. Dimitris Papatanasiou, Global Director of Energy at the World Bank Group, Dr. Daniel Dana, Secretary General of the Brazilian Electricity Regulatory Agency, ANEEL, Mr. Sergio Duenas Melendez, a Storage Sector Manager of the California Independent System Operator, CAISO, Andres Garcia Novel, Chief Investment Officer of the World Bank Group, and Gabriela Elizondo Azuela, Practice Manager for Energy for the Latin America and the Caribbean region of the World Bank Group. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor to Mr. Dimitris Papatanasiou. Dimitris, over to you.
Thank you very much, Xiaoping, and good morning for those of you connecting in the Americans. Good afternoon if you're connecting from Europe and Asia, and then good evening further east. So clearly energy storage battery systems is changing dramatically the way we have been thinking about electricity. So I was trained as an electrical engineer, and a lot of our planning exercises, how do we deal with serving the peak at the least cost and making sure that you have enough inertia in your system, enough rotating machines that can maintain the frequency of the systems within a very fine bracket of error so that everything can function well, and how to optimize costs with all that. And as the world has started decarbonizing, as we have seen much more solar coming into the system, much more wind coming into the system, the problem has always been how do you integrate these sources that have been variable and that you could not easily manage them in the system. And I think starting in the last 10 years or so, we have seen larger battery systems coming online. And I think it's great that we have the California system operator joining here, because they have pioneered the efforts to try and see whether you can really replace gas peaking plants with large-scale battery energy storage systems. And of course, how do you do that? How do you organize things so that things still remain least cost? And what this means is you increasingly move for a system that is looking for the most efficient machine, and it is dependent a lot on the cost of the underlying fossil fuel. We're moving to a system where the marginal cost of energy becomes lower and lower as more renewable energy comes in. And the question is, what will happen into the future, as we expect that the second wave of batteries that are now in millions of cars around the world can start be deploying for a second lifetime within electricity systems. So part of the constraints that we had in terms of batteries being very expensive, first of all, this is becoming, we see batteries becoming cheaper and cheaper, but there will be dramatic changes when batteries that have a second life as storage in the electricity systems are going to come online as well in the next 5 to 6 years. So There's a lot that has been changing on the technology front in electricity systems, but nevertheless, the challenge always remains: how do you make sure that the lights stay on? And especially lately, when affordability questions have emerged on the cost of energy and the cost of electricity, even in OECD countries. First of all, because of the war in Ukraine and the gas prices spiking, and then we had the inflation after the COVID. So all of these questions are coming together, and battery energy systems technologies is what can really shake the foundations of how we have been powering energy systems in the past, and how we have been looking for the least cost options, and then how to see how do we finance all of that. So this is a very exciting topic, and I'm really glad that we have been working with the Energy Storage Partnership around the world with experts for several years now. And the World Bank Group has been financing thousands of megawatts and thousands of megawatt hours of battery systems around the world in a variety of situations. So we are building a really good set of knowledge and understanding and experiences on batteries. And we will keep on doing that, because this is an environment that is changing significantly and has a lot more to offer in terms of providing electricity reliably, in a sustainable manner, and increasingly more and more affordable. So really excited for this event today. And again, I think this is a continuing changing space with a lot of opportunities that we will remain engaged, and where we see tremendous amount of demand and growth coming forward. So with this, I'm passing it on back to you, Xiaoping. And again, thanks for organizing this. And a special thanks to all our guests, external guests of the World Bank, who will be contributing their knowledge and experience as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Demetrius, for setting up the stage. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Daniel Dana to come in. Daniel, can you?
You're muted, Xiaoping.
Demetrius, for setting up the stage, really a good big segue to the rich discussion today. We'd like to now pass the floor to Dr. Daniel Dana. Daniel, can you please check your tech first, see if you can share the presentation now before I introduce you?
All right. Xiaoping, I cannot share my presentation yet.
Okay, so in that case, Daniel, we're going to share your presentation on the screen, and you give us through where to go. And Sanam can put up your presentation now. Yeah. So Daniel is Secretary General of the Brazil Electricity Regulatory Agency, also known as ANEEL. He actually is a doctor in economics, but he has a very long and fulfilling career in ANEEL since 2007, has worked across different regulatory and institutional areas, including economic regulations, tariff management, administrative mediation, and institutional relations. Before he became Secretary General in 2003, he has also served in the role of Deputy Secretary General and also Acting Director in ANEEL. So Daniel also has been an alum of the Energy Storage Academy. So we are very proud to have him here today to share what is the evolving journey that ANEEL has traveled in incorporating this very new energy storage into the regulatory framework in Brazil. So Daniel, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Xiaoping, for the presentation. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody who is following and listening and seeing this webinar. Well, I will first introduce ANEEL for everybody who doesn't know who ANEEL is. And can you change the slide? Okay, ANEEL is the authority for regulating the marketing, electricity market in Brazil. It was created in 1996 and started operating in 1997. So we are now completing 30 years. And we are in charge of regulating the market to oversight this marketing, monitoring all these concessions, permissions, and authorizations in the market. And we also mediate all the disputes between the agencies, and we are in charge of the grants too. So we award these concessions for the new projects, and we are always monitoring them. And our leadership structure is composed by 5 directors. One of them is the general director. At each year, they have a 5 years mandate, and at each year, one director leaves the board and another one enter into the board, and all the directors are appointed by the President of Brazil. And during the period that a director is not appointed by the President, we have this figure like the acting director, which I was one of them. And during this period that I was in the board, I was part of the board, I was in charge of this process of regulating setting the first rules for storage systems. So I'm really proud to have this conversation with you about this important topic for us. And we are also divided in terms of the structure. We are also divided in 17 units, and all the decisions we take are taken by public hearings, consultants, and the meetings are transmitted by the internet, all the meetings of the board. And the next, please. About the Brazilian market, we are now have a market of 215 gigawatts capacity. We are basically renewable. 85% of our capacity is based on renewable energy, and 60% of this total is hydro, is based on hydropower plants. So we are renewable, and it's a good example, I think, for the rest of the world. Our grid corresponds to 182 kilometers, and it's all integrated and controlled by our operator, the ONS. And we connect from north to south of the country. And we have more than 370 contracts under our control. We have 94 million units of consumers in the grid, and 99.8% of the service is universalized. So basically all the population of Brazil have access to electricity. Next. We divided this the regulation for storage systems into 3 cycles, and we set a roadmap for that. The first cycle, which is about to end, have some objectives and the challenge. The objectives are to define the first rules for for the grant, the access to the network, the usage protocols and remuneration structures. And the big challenge was to remove barriers and operational difficulties for deploying this technology, which is very important for us, and all the world is discussing it right now. Next. Now, so we had a long public discussion, and it was composed basically by 8 normative solutions. Solutions set by a rule, 5 non-normative solutions, which includes communication, using of PhD programs, and other solutions that don't need to be regulated. And we had a huge participation. We received 652 public contributions, which is a big number considering our process that we have here. And in this public consultation, we had more 70 stakeholders participating on it. So it demonstrates how important it is to the country. Next. I think one more shopping. No, can you come back, please? So back, yes. So this discussion is not ended in the board. So what I will say from now are topics that I could present and introduce to the board during this period. I was an acting director, but the board didn't finish the discussion. So this is the general points that I proposed, and it's not a guarantee that it will close this first cycle as I'm showing here. So in terms of grant, we divided the storage systems into 2 categories: standalone storage, which is an agent that can offer storage as an independent provider, and a co-located storage, which is associated to a generation company. So in this case, it can provide operational flexibility and enhance revenue potential for them. The grant would be an independent energy producer, as we call here, and the duration of this grant is 35 years, which is the general rule for authorizations in these cases. All the environmental requirements are not in charge of ANEEL. There is another agent in charge of this. So when always a company wants to offer a storage system, it has to look for this environmental licenses, and all this documentation is stored in ANEEL. So when it operates in a co-located storage, they have an unified contract. So the generation and the storage will be a part of a single company, and it's possible to reduce the injection in this case by up to 30% to accommodate this storage the storage utility in the company. And for existing projects, it's possible to reduce by up to 5% annually until this 30%. So the pace of reduction is 5%. And next slide. In terms of tariff, the tariff approach is based on charging for charging and paying for charging and discharging. So when a battery is recharging, it will pay for it, and when it's discharging, it also will pay for it. And they can also provide other kinds of services like energy trading, ancillary services, and demand response. So a company which wants to offer the storage and the system can have other source of revenue to maintain this equilibrium in their contracts and the financial healthy. Next. And when we finish this first cycle of our roadmap, we start the second cycle. And it will start this year until the next year. That's what we are planning. And we have also a third cycle finishing in 28, I think. And after that, we will have a continuous monitoring process and to evaluate how our regulation is going on and what we have to develop and improve in the market. So the second cycle will be focused basically on transmission and distribution assets and semi-open cycle reversible hydro plants. Brazil, as I said, now have 60% of its capacity based on hydro. So this discussion for reversible hydro plants are very important for us. And the third cycle we'll discuss the services aggregators, framework enabling, distributed storage coordination, computational model simulations, and final adjustments for these open cycle reversible hydro plants. And after that, we have this continuous monitoring process. Next. And in the end of last year, we had the first law talking about the storage system, which was very positive. And they said one important thing is the recognition of the storage as a formal classification, not only concession or an authorization or a permission. So this recognizes the storage systems as an asset for the system. And the law set some incentives for storage. R$1 billion of reais of annual taxes incentive cap during this period from 2026 to 2030, and also set an import tariff reduction to 0% as a way to stimulate the market. And it also set financing structure, which the charge distributed among generators proportionally to energy generated signals storage structure role. And I'll talk about this in the next slides when I will discuss the auction, which is being discussed in the country. So next slide. We are last year, the Ministry of Mines and Energy proposed an auction. So they published a document with some intentions of this action, and there they set some requirements, technical requirements for the storage systems, which includes this minimal 4 hours of sustained discharge, 6 hours of recharge time, and an efficiency greater to 85% round trip. And the minimal capacity was 30 megawatt available. So those are the requirements which were shown to the society. It's a process that's not finished yet, so this timeline is an estimation based on the market perception. So it's not. I can't guarantee that we have an auction on April. So that's what the market is talking about and what I'm reproducing here. So if the expectations of the market are correct, we have an auction on April 26 with these technical requirements, and the storage systems will start operating in 2028. So, and they will have a 10 years duration of contract. And as I said in the last slide, all this cost will be paid by the generators. So consumers won't pay directly to this operation of the storage system, but the generators will pay for that. Next. And also for the auction, it's expected to have a fixed annual revenue. So they have a 12 monthly payment covering investments, operation, maintenance. So all these costs a company will have. The risk allocation is as it will be dispatched by the operator, so they have some risk when they can't offer the energies from the storage systems. There will be allocation bonus of 10% price reduction for systems in strategic locations, with demonstrated systemic benefits encouraging optimal grid placement. Let's see how it will be. And last, they are planning to have a grid forming technology. So it's mandatory for conversion systems, ensuring grid security and operational flexibility during disturbances and transition. So that's what we expected for grid forming. Let's see how it will be this year. Everybody, as I said, is waiting for this auction, and we'll see how it will be. That's my last slide. The next one is only the thank you for my time, and I'm here to discuss if we have time.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's very much interesting and a very illuminating in a sense that you are taking a very progressive approach, right? You start with a fundamental concept of energy storage, and then you dive into various issues and challenges that are unique to energy storage, and you combine the regulations with procedures, process, and with incentives. So I'm sure there are questions. We'll keep to the end after Sergio's presentation. Now I would like to introduce Sergio, who is an energy storage manager at CAISO, the California Independent System Operator. As you know, CAISO is really a world leader in integrating storage into the power system. I think CAISO alone has nearly 15 gigawatt energy storage already in place. So Sergio is part of the market design and analyst team of CAISO, leads the effort and initiative related to storage resources in its various configurations. Specifically, Sergio works with policy developers, stakeholders, market participants, and other colleagues in CAISO to develop tools and advance market design to ensure storage contribute to a resilient, reliable power grid. Before CAISO, Sergio served as policy manager for the California Energy Storage Alliance, where he oversaw the alliance advocacy effort on storage market participation. And Sergio also had a consulting career before that to the electricity, oil, gas industries in Mexico and the US. So Sergio is very, very pleased to have you here with us. And some of us actually visited CAISO last year. It was really eye-opening and a reflection. So today we want to hear more from you, Sergio.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invite and for the time today. I think I was able to share my slides before, but now I can't.
Okay, no problem. We will open up the presentation on the screen.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I wanted to do today for my time was to quickly go over what CAISO is, what we do, how we fit in the electric sector in California, the Western US, and the US as a whole, and then chat a little bit about the trends we're seeing related to renewable integration, ramping needs, and storage development. And finally, I'll close with how storage participates in our markets. What are some of the, let's say, prerequisites or very important policies and issues to consider when integrating storage. And finally, I'll have some time along with ANEEL for some questions from the audience. So if we can go to the next slide. So CAISO, the California Independent System Operator, and really independent system operators as a whole in the U.S. are a little bit of a complex beast to describe for other jurisdictions. In the United States, we don't have a single unified national grid. What we actually have are various either state or regional grids that are administered by regional transmission organizations or independent system operators. So CAISO is a federally regulated nonprofit corporation. We are independent and technology neutral. We manage the high voltage electric grid for the majority of California and a portion of Nevada. In our day-to-day work, I like to think about this as we wear different hats. one of the hats we wear is reliability because we are a system operator. So we are in charge of preserving the reliability of the grid. The other hat we wear is we are a market operator. So we are seeking to achieve the most cost-effective solutions, minimizing costs while ensuring reliability. And the final hat we wear is we are an infrastructure planning organization. We are in charge of planning for transmission development within our jurisdiction. So there's definitely different goals that we are trying to balance and different goals that kind of define our strategies and our behavior as a system operator, a market operator, and a transmission planner organization. If we can go to the next slide, I describe a little bit more our core responsibilities. And so as I mentioned, within our jurisdiction of the California ISO, we maintain the reliability of the grid. We manage the flow of energy on the high voltage transmission lines. We oversee transmission planning, and we operate the wholesale electric market. Beyond our footprint, for much of the Western U.S., we also operate the Western Energy Imbalance Market, which is a real-time 5-minute imbalance market across the majority of the Western U.S. And I have a couple of maps later to illustrate it. And we also provide services of reliability coordination, which basically means we take on some of the administrative and also operational needs to ensure reliability across other footprints, not just the California ISO. In the next slide, I share some of the facts of the ISO along with a handy map so that you can imagine us in the broader context of North America. As you can see, there are several ISOs in the U.S. Starting from the east, we have the New England ISO, the New York ISO. Then we have 3 larger multi-state regional transmission organizations, PJM, the Mid-Continent ISO, and the Southwest Power Pool. Then all the way in the west, we have the California ISO. So all of these organizations, we are similar in the sense that we are market operators. We're in charge of reliability of our footprints, and we're also engaging in transmission planning. For all of those territories I just mentioned, all of those jurisdictions, we are all under the jurisdiction federally of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the exception being Texas. Texas is not under FERC jurisdiction since they only operate within that state. There's no interstate commerce, so they're not federally regulated. All of the area around the California ISO that you see in green are not organized markets, but they, in many cases, those territories do participate in our Western Energy Imbalance Market so that they can, in real time, be able to better leverage their resources and be able to minimize their costs by co-optimizing with other regions, other neighboring regions. In this slide, I think beyond the map, the key thing to take away is we have a record peak demand of about 52,000 megawatts. So that will give you an idea of scale when we start talking about how much solar, how much storage we have, and how much we'll have later on. Let's go to the next slide where I cover a little bit the Western Energy Imbalance Market. So we launched this in 2014. Since then, a lot of different areas have joined. The goal of this Western Energy Imbalance Market is to be able to expand the benefits of enhanced grid reliability, improved integration of renewable resources, and really improved real-time balancing throughout the West. I mentioned before, the majority of the West is not within an organized market. So the goal of the Western Energy Imbalance Market is to include some of this regions, some of these participating entities, so that in real time we can leverage flexibly resources across this footprint and meet load at the lowest cost. Since we launched this over 10 years ago, our cumulative benefits have exceeded $7 billion, and this has also resulted in material emissions reductions. And this is particularly important when thinking about storage, because you can see that the value of regionalization, of regional coordination, really comes from having a wide diversity of resources, but also of load patterns, right? The more diversity you can have, where in a given region it's warmer or colder, sunnier or cloudier, you can leverage the resources to meet load more cost effectively. Okay, so that's really all of the kind of CAISO background that I wanted to share. So now I'll move on to more so, where are we with ramping renewables and storage? So as I mentioned before, we have 52,000 megawatts of record peak demand. We are seeing significant ramping needs, particularly in the spring and summer months, where we see solar resources very quickly, as the sun sets, very quickly decrease their outputs. In March of last year, we saw a need for a 3-hour ramp of about 23,000 megawatts. So it's a very quick reaction time for an awful lot of the grid. And we are also, California, we're very much defined by our solar reliance, right? We have an excellent solar resource here, great solar irradiation. And because of that, compared to other jurisdictions, we're a much more solar-heavy grid than, let's say, wind or hydro-heavy. As of October, the end of October of last year, we have almost 15,000 megawatts of battery capacity, all of it 4-hour in duration. We also have pumped hydro, but that's not included in this figure. So of the battery capacity that is included here in the 14,905 megawatts, all of it's really 4-hour in duration. If we go to the next slide, I'll share a little bit about how this came to be. That's a very common question we get of, how did California start doing this some years ago? What was the key driver? Well, I would say that the key driver is that California's clean energy goals really demonstrated early on that eventually we were going to need storage en masse. So at the beginning of the 2000s, 2002, we first established a renewable portfolio standard that initially required that 20% of electricity sales should be served by renewables by 2017. Since 2002, those targets kept increasing, right? We started seeing additional legislation that made that the targets were higher. And very quickly, industry experts and legislatures realized, well, if we're going to significantly bolster our renewable generation, we need to establish targets for the procurement of storage resources so that we can really leverage that renewable generation. So in 2010, additional legislation was passed to establish the procurement of storage system procurement targets, right? So when we started doing that, the goal was 1,350 megawatts by 2020. This was back in 2010, 2011, right? So we gave ourselves about a decade to procure a little over a gigawatt. And what that legislation really did is it was like it brought all of the important parties to the table to have to figure out how do we interconnect this? How do we model it in the market? And most importantly, how do we monetize this? How do we make sure that the resources that load-serving entities, in this case, investor-owned utilities, are going to have to procure, how do they make sure that their benefits and their value is properly monetized? So this really brought everyone to the table. We started having discussions in the different applicable venues, how to interconnect, how to model, how to monetize. And because of that, we were able to get a little bit ahead of several of the discussions at the federal level that later on really forced our other ISOs, RTOs across the U.S. to start, making progress on this item. So California was able to get a little bit ahead because we knew that our clean energy goals were going to elicit the need for storage. Since then, our clean energy goals have just gotten more ambitious. In 2018, we passed legislation to have 100% of all retail sales coming from zero carbon and renewable resources. And in 2022, we established interim goals to make sure that we're on path to meet this target. So I'd say, to close out this slide quickly, the story of California storage growth is really the story of proactive policy development across agencies and organizations. If we go to the next slide, I cover a little bit what that growth has looked like. So this graph starts in 2020. Remember, 2020 was the year that we wanted to have a little over a gigawatt of storage. That was the goal. And since then, we've really seen the hockey stick moment, right? The exponential growth of these resources. Since 2020, we've seen about 27 gigawatts of new nameplate capacity has been added. The majority of that, particularly solar and storage. In the graph that you can see here, we also have a little sliver of orange that says hybrid. That I'll explain a bit later, but it's similar to the concept of basically having storage and generation in the same point of interconnection. So we've seen a tremendous growth of resources, particularly solar and storage. And in the remainder of this decade, we expect well over 20 more gigawatts of additional resources to come online. Here, I think it's valuable to underscore, these numbers sound really, really big, 27 gigawatts and 20 gigawatts more. Sergio, you just said the peak was about 50,000 megawatts. Why do we need this much? I'd say two pieces. The first one is we are expecting significant load growth. I think that's something that is happening across the U.S., with this server and AI revolution. There's a lot of discussion around the need for advanced and large loads to be developed. So we are expecting load growth. But also, these resources, their capacity contribution, their reliability contribution is quite different than that of conventional dispatchable resources such as gas. So their total additions represent perhaps a bit of a lower reliability contribution, as we'll discuss a bit later. So if we go to the next slide, we can zoom in on the purple part of this graph. So this is really the storage story. We've seen about 15 gigawatts being developed. I think we did a very big zoom there. Okay, perfect. Thank you. We've seen about 15 gigawatts being developed. This includes both standalone battery storage and the storage component of hybrid resources. And, in the future, we expect, again, about 14 more gigawatts to come online in the remainder of this decade or so. Okay, going on to the next slide, I'll move a bit quicker, and this is all about how storage derives value in California. I think in Daniel's presentation, we had this kind of discussion around long-term auctions, long-term centralized auctions. We don't do that in California. In other places of the United States that exists, but we don't do that. Here, the capacity value is derived by a program that we call resource adequacy. And resource adequacy is basically a bilateral market. It's not a centralized market. So the Public Utilities Commission, which is the regulator of all of the load-serving entities of the utilities, the Public Utilities Commission does a study. They determine how much capacity each utility needs to bring to be able to reliably meet their load. And then each of those load-serving entities need to bilaterally contract that capacity. So storage resources can get capacity payments by contracting directly with a load-serving entity. Their revenues are paid in terms of dollars per megawatt month. And these are really the revenues that make projects financeable, that make projects be able to, get the loans they need, put steel in the ground, and keep going. The other side of the revenue story is the energy side, and that's where we come in, CAISO. Resources get revenues for energy based on participating on the market. So storage resources initially were just only providing ancillary services in our market because they're very quick to respond. But that market is very small compared to energy, so it was quickly saturated. Today, energy revenues are purely based on energy arbitrage, on buying low and selling high, really. Resources still get ancillary service payments, but what I'm trying to say is they get more of their revenue now from energy since AS has been saturated. So they can get both in the energy market. Revenues are settled every single trade day. And importantly, if a resource was contracted for resource adequacy, if they have that capacity contract, they must offer in the energy market. That's how we create that linkage between you were shown for capacity, well, now you need to offer in the energy market so that we can leverage you economically. Okay, next slide. We talk a little bit about the models of storage. Similar to what Daniel was covering, we also have a standalone model. We call it the non-generator resource model. The key thing is that these resources can go from charging to discharging without any transition time. It's very important for us. There may be technologies out there that can do this with some transition times, like pumped hydro. For us, the only way that we model you like this is if you have no transition times. We also have mixed fuel resource alternatives, just similar to this notion of co-located or pairing generation with storage. We offer two flavors of that, hybrid or co-located. The key thing to consider when thinking about this is basically who is co-optimizing the underlying assets behind that shared point of interconnection. In the hybrid resource pathway, the resource owner has the ability to co-optimize behind the scenes. They just need to give us a single bit curve that represents, the whole collection of things going on behind that point of interconnection. On the co-located resource, very different. The ISO, CAISO, we have visibility into all of the underlying resources behind that point of interconnection. Each of them submit a different bid curve, right? And we co-optimize to maximize use of that shared point of interconnection without violating any of its limits. So very similar, it's just about who has the flexibility here. In the next slide, I cover a little bit how resources get this value. As I mentioned before, storage resources are able to sell all of CAISO market products, energy, ancillary services, and our flexibility products. We quickly saw these resources saturating the ancillary service market from going to, providing a small share of AS to basically all of it, of what we have today. And now we see a large, extensive participation in energy arbitrage. We use state of charge tracking to make sure that awards and schedules will be feasible. And we also model through a process we call multi-interval optimization. We are able to better determine when is the stored energy the most valuable for the grid, depending on forecasted future prices. I want to be very clear here that our goal in general is for all resources is to leverage them economically. Our goal is for these resources to convey their economics through their bidding behavior so that we can dispatch them when it's the most economic, right? So that being said, there are risks that these resources take in their price arbitrage strategy. And as time goes on and we have more and more storage, the price arbitrage strategy will require iteration and rethinking. And this is where perhaps the need for longer duration storage will come in, right? Because as you get a lot of 4-hour, those opportunities for arbitrage become slimmer and slimmer. So longer durations might be more valuable eventually. Okay, if we go on to the next slide, we cover a little bit about the bids, how those look. I think pretty obvious, a positive energy award means that you discharge. A negative energy award means that you're charging. This is where we model the inefficiency of the resource. We limit awards in both directions based on the state of charge we have modeled, and resources submit their bids as a 10-segment monotonically non-decreasing curve. In the next slide, if we can go to the next one, this is how, this is how the ancillary services work, right? So ancillary services value rapid response. Storage is almost instantaneous in its response. So we're seeing very clear that storage is taking the majority of that, as I mentioned. But this creates challenges, I think, for the folks working here as system operators. This might be interesting, particularly when you think about regulation. There is an inherent uncertainty on whether the need for it will materialize. So we also need to think about how to model the impact of ancillary service awards on the future state of charge. Today, we have some formulas to try to approximate that impact so that we have a better estimate of where state of charge will be in the future, but this is an area of constant improvement. If we go to the next slide, cover a little bit how people can participate in our market. So today, storage resources, they can submit either self-schedules or economic bids. A self-schedule is what it sounds like. They're basically price takers. They ensure that they're going to perform either charging or discharging in the hours they want, but they are not able to, convey their price sensitivity by being self-schedulers. When they submit economic bids, though, and we get this pair of, I am willing to inject this many megawatts if the price reaches this amount, we are able to actually co-optimize that with the remainder of the grid and make sure we're leveraging these resources economically. And that's really our preference. That's why if resources have a resource adequacy or capacity contract, they need to submit economic bids. Okay, next slide. In this slide, I show quickly how a bid looks, because I know that the monotonically non-decreasing already sounds scary, right? But it's basically a step function. You're telling us if the price is this low, I'm willing to charge this much. If the price is this high, I'm willing to discharge this much. Okay, let's go to the next one. These are the last two slides I have. So some things to keep in mind. We have a day-ahead market and a real-time market. In the day-ahead market, we are able to optimize resources across the whole 24-hour horizon. So that makes it that it's really easy for the system, for the algorithm, to kind of schedule storage to charge when it's the cheapest and to discharge when it's the most valuable. Now, in real time, though, that is way more complex, because in real time, we have a difference in when bids need to be submitted and when the trade hour happens. We also have a difference between what we know about the day, right? We have new information coming in real time. So here we really need these resources to consider future conditions so that their bid curves allow them to actually manage their state of charge, right? These resources are pure arbitrage resources. They need to be on top of their economics so that we can use them effectively. If not, we would end up still in a situation where we're probably not using the most constrained asset, the most fuel limited asset, really when it's needed the most. So this is an ongoing challenge of kind of figuring out how resources, how to enhance the bidding ability of resources to properly convey their economics. And something that we found is that the economics of storage are really depending on the state of charge. So today we have bidding that is based on megawatts per dollars per megawatt hour. But really for storage, it should be state of charge by dollars per megawatt hour. That's actually what they're selling. Okay, if we go to the next slide, I wanted to show you just a couple of graphs that tell us a little bit about the behavior of storage in the CAISO market. If we can go to slide 18. Not sure if the slides are changing for you all. Oh.
Yeah,
Can we go to it? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this shows you kind of what storage is actually doing. This was our peak, our storage discharge record of last year. We're definitely set to break it once more because we have more storage now. But basically here you can see as renewables in the green line start really picking up, the majority of that being solar, you can see that natural gas decreases a bit, imports decrease a lot as solar starts picking up, and that's where the batteries are really charging that purple line. And then close to 3 p.m., we start seeing that discharge of the batteries that allows us to navigate their ramp down of solar while maintaining natural gas relatively flat. And then later on, really, the batteries are picking up the remainder of that net peak later in the evening. In the next slide, I show this a little bit more seasonally. If we can go to the next one, perfect. So here, we can see that the behavior of storage is really directly related to charging energy availability. California, we're very solar heavy. January and February, not very solar heavy months. So you can see here, this plots are box plots. The box is the interquartile range from the 75th to the 25th percentile of resources. The dots represent outliers. So you can see that September through November, the majority of resources are charging in the middle of the day, discharging later in the afternoon and through the net peak. December through February, you can see that the outliers are a little bit more material in the middle of the day, meaning that charging energy availability has been reduced. And this is really kind of the trend or the story of why would a system with a lot of storage need even more and even more solar? Well, because across the year, that charging availability varies, and at maintaining the duration constant, you will need more to be able to achieve similar capacity effects, right? The other option is to vary our generation mix or vary the duration of the storage. So I'll pause here. I know that was an awful lot of information. Thank you for the time and looking forward to the conversation and questions.
Thanks very much, Sergio. You really bring us to the top of the mountain in terms of the complexity of managing, managing a system of this size and solar heavy. But you also described a variety of products and services that energy storage can offer in this large solar heavy system. So next I would like to invite actually my colleague Andres Garcia Novel to come in to share the private sector perspective and how the market design and the regulatory framework are relevant and important to private sector investment. Andres is a Chief Investment Officer of IFC International Finance Corporation, and now we are merged into the same department of Energy Department of the World Bank Group. As many of you know, IFC actually is a leading IFI in private sector investment in energy storage. I think the portfolio amounts to more than $1 billion with more than a dozen projects already approved. So Andres, over to you.
Thank you, Xiaoping, and good morning, everyone. Really happy to have this opportunity to interact with Daniel and Sergio, who I've met in the past, to discuss system integration of batteries and also other storage technologies. I think it's really clear from their presentation that this is quite a long journey. I think Sergio was mentioning about the setting of a storage targets more than 15 years ago. And it's also quite specific to each jurisdiction, right? I think it's very difficult to compare Brazil to California, with Brazil having a largely hydro power generation matrix where the large reservoirs are providing quite a bit of value on the storage front. And now really reacting to the penetration of distributed generation over the last few years, we're starting really to see problems of curtailment with non-conventional renewable energy. And therefore, there is this thought process around capacity auction for batteries and what comes next, which could, to a certain degree, mimic what we've seen in California, the revenue stacking model, and I'll comment a little bit more on that in the next few minutes. So I think as we've heard, storage integration is not really a technology problem, it's really more of a market design, bankability challenge. We've heard a lot about market design from the experts, so I'm not going to comment too much on that. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the bankability side of things with a project finance lens. And here I'm just going to make a few remarks. When I mention storage, I'm going to be referring mainly to lithium-ion batteries because clearly that's the predominant storage technology, non-traditional storage technology that we're talking about. We expect this to continue to be predominant into the medium term. I mean, it has notably benefited from a number of tailwinds. Certainly the huge cell manufacturing capacity deployment over the last few years, driven by in large part by the electric vehicle market that has driven quite significant manufacturing economies of scale, a price reduction on battery cells of maybe 75 to 85% over the last 10 years, making this a very competitive and appealing technology. Nevertheless, and I go back to one of the comments that Sergio was mentioning, we do expect other technologies to come through in the medium term, not necessarily to displace lithium-ion, but to complement, right? So some of the systems, and we saw it in the case of California, are already signaling the need for inter-day balancing and resilience. And this is where we see maybe some of the long-duration energy storage technologies come into play, technologies like flow batteries, compressed air, that could potentially be competitive beyond the storage duration of 8 to 10 hours, right? So it might be good, and I'll defer to the Q&A, what the audience wants to talk about, but it might be good to hear from Sergio, how CAISO is thinking about incorporating some of these new technologies as well in the coming years. So let me go back very quickly to a few considerations on bankability, and I'm sure the audience wants to have opportunity to do a bit of Q&A as well. I have 3 topics to put on the table. One really relates to whether, batteries, the questions that we hear from credit committees when we started looking at this 2-3 years ago, whether this is really a proven technology. I think clearly, technically it is. I mean, there's no question about it. The technology has been around for decades. is more about a matter or a consideration around the long-term availability of a long-term operating track record, that it's satisfactory, and that provides evidence that the technology is operating at the relevant size and the operating parameters that are expected, right? For similar use cases as the ones that we're contemplating on our investments. So locally, in the case of lithium ion, the first utility scale stationary projects were deployed in the US, Japan, and Western Europe maybe more than 15 years ago. So there is quite a significant track record in that respect. We have seen the market's regulation maturing, and with that, really ramp up on the project financing activities. Quite focused on the US, Europe, Japan, but now we're seeing quite a lot more on places like Australia and some of our emerging markets in South Africa and Chile and Egypt, certainly in Eastern Europe. So this is quite encouraging, and there is already quite a bit of practitioners' acumen here as it relates to project financing for batteries, standalone batteries, and renewable energy plus battery projects. The second consideration, which I think is really critical in terms of structuring, is understanding the use case. And here I pause to, because many of the finance practitioners here on the call might be making parallels to renewable energy financing. And clearly, when you look at the generation project, the use case is one, which is power generation. Here we're talking about flexible technology that could provide different services. So really understanding the use case, the implications on the performance of the battery, the useful life of the battery has quite significant implications in terms of financial structuring. For instance, we would want to make sure that we have a degradation warranty that is commensurate and consistent with the operational parameters and the contractual undertakings of the project, right? As well, we would want to make sure, and in some cases it's needed, to fund a major maintenance reserve account in order to have sufficient cash to be able to face augmentation CapEx in due course as needed, right? So a couple of considerations on that respect. And finally, go back to alluding to one of the points that was at the core of the prior two presentations, which is the remuneration framework. And here we might want to differentiate markets like California and Brazil, where we have kind of access to the private sectors, the regulated markets, where we have battery projects or renewable energy plus battery projects really seeking to stack different sources of revenues. And here, as Sergio commented on, and Daniel as well, we normally see projects anchoring the revenue stack on a capacity contract, a capacity payment, or in the case of California, resource adequacy contract that usually entails maybe 30-40% of the total revenue requirement of the project. But then the rest of the revenues come through participating openly in the market, so getting compensated for ancillary services, or more importantly, as in the case of California, Chile, and others, energy arbitrage, right? So these require quite a bit of level of sophistication on the part of the lenders, because it is, it does require understanding the market dynamics and structure around merchant risk and potential congestion issues. Having said that, many of the emerging markets where we operate, we have a different kind of system architecture where the system is kind of organized around maybe one or two utilities, integrated utilities, and then batteries and renewable energy plus battery projects actually are implemented through PPA contracts or availability-based contracts. For this, I think on the bankability side of things, it's more of an ad hoc approach. We need to understand, obviously, whether the contracts are bankable and whatnot. These are usually simpler to bank because you could focus on the contracts and the specific undertakings on contractual undertakings of these contracts. But obviously, it could be quite tricky, especially when you have hybrid projects, renewable energy plus BESS, where there could be interface issues between the renewable energy component, the BESS component, and then the off-taker. In terms of where we go from here, and then I'll open up for back to you, Xiaoping, in case there's a space for Q&A. I see we still have some time. really, I think we would continue to see, we would expect for batteries to continue to be deployed alongside renewables, facilitate renewable energy penetration as we've seen in California. That's clearly an application that we see ramping up in our markets as well. But I want to touch upon the point that Daniel mentioned for the second cycle, which is the increased appetite of battery storage or storage applications for T&D, for transmission and distribution. Clearly for peak shaving, but also for stability, for resilience, to facilitate penetration of distributed generation, which in many of our markets it's a big issue. This does require quite a bit of changes on the planning methodologies, cost-benefit analysis methodologies, also asset recognition and asset remuneration at the distribution level. So it's going to be quite a challenge from a regulatory and market design standpoint. And then, we would expect to see as well, as I mentioned at the beginning, new technologies coming up, long-duration energy storage. Again, not necessarily to displace lithium-ion, but to complement lithium-ion in certain respects. Finally, just to mention, I do think the World Bank Group has a big role to play in facilitating all of this, assessing, evaluating new technologies, but also supporting the regulatory journey, many of the jurisdictions in which we operate. And quite importantly, also building up the capacities at the utility level, as we're talking about T&D applications. So with that, thanks a lot for the time, and great to see Sergio and Daniel, and to hear their remarks. And back to you, Shopping.
Thanks very much, Andres. And now I'd like to take a couple questions. Short questions and short answers. I see Ankit Gupta. Would you like to come in and state your question to the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Wang, for the opportunity. So I would like to ask any numbers regarding the efficiency we have, round trip efficiency, when the BESS is integrated or the PSP is integrated to the grid, with respect to the discharge and discharge. Overall efficiency.
I can chime in here. I think the 85% and above value that Daniel shared is really representative of what we're seeing across particularly lithium-ion technologies. Other technologies, they might have, there's usually a trade-off between duration and efficiency.
Yes.
That's a common trade-off. But I would say as a system moves towards needing longer and longer durations, it is very likely that the efficiency is less of a factor for that grid.
Ankit, would you introduce yourself?
I am Ankit Gupta and presently working at TERI. Prior to this, I have a decade of experience in energy storage in NTPC. I have worked in NTPC, National Thermal Power Corporation, where we have implemented various energy storage technologies in R&D. So I'm just looking at an angle like with respect to long duration energy storage. Welcome. What can be the efficiency achieved on date, and what can be the degradation factor of that efficiency? Because there are various electromechanical energy storages available, electrochemical energy storage is available, thermal energy storage is available. So a good comparison study would always be better to look forward, which has to be implemented and when and where it has to be implemented. And the second question I had is, yeah, please. Yeah, Wang, please go ahead.
So I'd like to give the opportunity to also Mohammed, please.
Okay, thank you, Wang. So I am Mohammed Amin from Mazen. So I am wondering, I have just quick questions regarding the inclusion of supercapacitor in microgrids to enhance frequency response and voltage support. In this presentation, you have talked a lot about batteries, BESS storage system. However, supercapacitor are a little bit ignored. I am asking if this inclusion can be good for the market actually in this 5 years for long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Edison, you have the last question to ask, and then we will turn to the speakers. Please go. And introduce yourself first.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yes, I'm Edison Alvarez. I work in the electricity regulator of the Dominican Republic. And my main question is also leveraging a little bit on Daniel's experience in Brazil. So we have different type of electricity markets. We have some of them that are like bid based, as we see in the North America, US, and Canada, and others that are more cost-based, like in several countries in Latin America. So due to these differences in markets, best investors are looking for different things. So my main question is, in cost-based markets, like in Latin America, are best developers seeking into more low-risk long-term contracts, like tolling contracts, or they are taking a little bit more into the market volatility risk, even if the bids are like regulated cost in Latin American markets?
Thank you. Who want to come first? Of Andres, Daniel, and Sergio, please.
I
Would you
can
like to
comment
address
maybe on
these
the last
questions? Yeah.
question. Yeah, what I've observed, and Daniel might comment on Brazil. I think it's a much better place to comment on Brazil. But I think, for instance, in the Chile case, it's a cost-based market, and we see a traditional revenue stacking models with, again, the kind of the unique feature there is that the market itself is paying a capacity payment to batteries for a period of 10 years. That's per regulation. So that's kind of anchoring the revenue stack. And then the developers are taking a view on energy arbitrage as well. Even though the market's cost-based, there's a clear gap between solar time energy prices and nighttime energy prices, and there's clear congestion issues, right? So there is an energy arbitrage that is being signaled by the market, and developers are playing into that gap, right? So I think we see it clearly. It's a different dynamic than in California and other markets where you have a bid-based system and it's much more complicated. You have the day-ahead market, real-time market, etc. But it does work in the case of Chile as well. So again, it's difficult to generalize, but it's an example of the revenue stacking model working in this particular type of system.
Okay. I can talk about the efficiency. Well, the auction that we expected to have set an efficiency greater than 85% round trip. So I think that's a good parameter to have in mind. And I'm not sure if I think it was Ankit which asked about supercapacitor. I can answer about that. We discussed a lot about energy storage, though the BESS, but supercapacitor was not in the table during these discussions. At least the discussions I was included to, so I can talk about this. And about the last question regarding the cost-based and the view from the Latin America perspective, I think all entrepreneurs wants to guarantee a revenue. So independent of what they offer in terms of services, if you have you can be financially stabilized. So that's what is important. And here, the market is expecting a lot the auction, the capacity reserve auction that we will have. So it's like to guarantee the business. In terms of arbitrage, we had this huge discussion about paying for charging and discharging, and we don't have actually a system in terms of tariffs in the transmission system to guarantee a good arbitrage and to sustain the business. So that discussion will go on now, so in the country.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Sergio, any last thought from you?
Yeah, I think just to quickly address some of the other questions I saw, this is a process of continuous learning from our experience. Everything that we've learned about batteries has really come from as they come online, seeing their behavior, collaborating with our stakeholders, hearing what market participants are bringing forward. So I just really would like to encourage all to kind of follow, as well as what Daniel was saying, of make your process to incorporate all of this public, transparent, open, iterative, because there's an awful lot to learn, and really there's a lot of value here that I think is only unlocked through collaboration. Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry we couldn't take all the questions at this session. So please post your questions or leave your contact with us. We would address them offline. Now I'd like to give the floor to Gabriela Azuela, who is a practice manager for energy in Latin America region. Actually, Brazil fits squarely under her oversight, but Latin America in general has been also very progressive in terms of establishing the regulatory framework of bringing investment, including Chile that Andres mentioned earlier. So Gabriela, if you can share with us some of the takeaways from this session, I would really, really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very, very much, Xiaoping. And I like to just quickly start by thanking all the participants, particularly Daniel Cardoso, Dana from ANEEL, and Sergio Dueñas Melendez from CAISO. Thank you also to Andres Garcia Nobel for the points and the discussion on the session. And also I'd like to thank ESMAP, Xiaoping, and the ESMAP team for organizing this session. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Indeed, in Latin America, storage is becoming super important and central to power systems and power systems management operation. And we see great demand from our clients in Latin America to start thinking of how to design regulation, which is quite complex in the case of ancillary services, etc. So we see our clients very much interested in learning from organizations, regulators, operators that have experience. And I think both ANEEL and CAISO show that it's possible to do it, and that despite the complexity, there is a way of going ahead. In the case of Brazil, thank you very much, Daniel. It's very interesting to see that ANEEL has a phased regulatory roadmap. I was very happy to see that you are going to have an inaugural storage-specific auction soon to be launched in April. That's what I understood. This is very interesting. Also from Sergio, CAISO, a lot of experience coming from California. The fact that your aggressive clean energy policy really drove the early storage procurement targets and also now you have a massive recent growth in storage. So all this very interesting. I think today's session shows that energy storage is really central to modern power systems, that they are really necessary to stabilize the grid, improve flexibility, unlock the full value of renewable energy. We also heard that policy and regulatory frameworks really matter. Of course, without transparency, clear definitions, detailed, predictable remuneration regulation, it's not going to be easy. So thank you very much for this. I'll also like to finish just saying that we really need to have more sessions like this. Thank you to ESMAP. Thank you to the Energy Storage Academy. This material is very important for all of us. I hope that the discussion today was really interesting and that everyone is encouraged by the experiences in Brazil and California. And thank you for joining us. We look forward to the continuing exchange of information and knowledge and to future Energy Storage Academy activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriela. Indeed, thank you all the speakers and the participants here. So please follow us in LinkedIn, in ESMAP website, and we look forward to have you in the future activities under the Energy Storage Academy and the Energy Storage Partnership. Also, we will welcome feedback, how we can be the facilitator, be the knowledge broker, be the information sharing platform to all of you in anything that's related to energy storage, not just policy regulations, investment or implementation. So we have a core team here at the ESMAP working on this under the Energy Storage Academy and the Energy Storage Partnership. So I want to thank you all again one more time, and I look forward to continuing our interaction in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.